My name is Max Schachter. I'm the founder and executive director of Safe Schools for Alex.
I guess first tell me about, I can only imagine, I'm a father myself, losing a son to such a horrible, thing that's become far too common. Tell me about your organization and what you've been doing over the past several years.
So after Alex was murdered during the Parkland school shooting, I put my former life on hold, and so now I travel around the country and I present on Parkland on school safety. I present to a lot of law enforcement organizations, school districts, and help states, improve the safety of their schools. My wife and I started Safe Schools for Alex to provide parents information on what's happening in their schools after they drop their kids off. I had no idea that Alex was going to school with such a violent individual, but that's why we created our school safety dashboard. And so now every school in our state and every school around the country is now listed in our school safety dashboard. Every parent can go online and type in their school to see the numbers of incidents of violence and drugs that are happening on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis inside their kid's school. They can compare schools against each other, they can compare districts against each other. And we hope that school board members, superintendents, and state departments of education will use our dashboard. We have the most comprehensive portal on school safety incidents that exists currently online. And so most people have never seen the data that we have in regards to, levels of school violence and drugs and even discipline. And we hope that people will use our dashboard to make schools safer across the country.
After Parkland and as the years have gone on, were you surprised at how much, I guess, to me outside looking, it didn't seem like a lot was being done. I mean, it was the same speeches over and over again. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families, and but then these instances continue to happen and continue to happen. Have you been satisfied with I guess the rate of change to put an end to these tragedies?
Well, more has been done to improve the safety of our schools since Parkland than ever before after any other tragedy. And I travel around the country and people always tell me, "Oh, Max, we did this after Parkland or we did that after Parkland." You'd be surprised how many states started school safety centers and really started to get serious about protecting the kids in their school after our tragedy. And then Florida, really took the lead in across the nation. We're doing things that no other state is doing. And I think that I know schools are much safer in Florida than they were prior to the tragedy. What we learned afterwards was that there was a lot of complacency. And the principal of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School was uninterested and uninvolved in school safety and the threat assessment process. And there was a threat assessment done on the Parkland murderer in 2016 that was completely botched. And if it had been done properly, Alex and the 16 others would still be here today. So that's the reason I do what I do is because there is just so much complacency in this country. We live in the greatest country in the world, and there's a lot of communities that have not been touched by horrible tragedies like Parkland. And we shouldn't have to wait for a terrible tragedy for people to react and do things in their community. And these are simple things that we know will make schools safer. So after Parkland, we've made instrumental change. We've passed 7 school safety bills in Florida, and we have great leadership in our state and people that care about this issue and understand that if your students and your staff don't make it home to their families every day, nothing else matters. That's why I do what I do. I travel around the country and try to communicate how urgent the threat is, and that if you haven't had a terrible tragedy, you just been lucky. But it's not a question of if, it's just a question of when and where it's going to happen.
And so now the Florida legislature is taking another step, the state of Florida, to try to make things safer by approving, more than $500,000 for this Campus Guardian Angels program, a program where drones will be used to basically respond immediately. They can respond within 5 seconds, according to the CEO. What are your thoughts about these, non-lethal drones and perhaps distract the shooter before law enforcement can actually get to the shooter?
Well, we know that during Parkland, it was all over in 3 minutes and 51 seconds. And just on the first floor alone, where my little boy Alex was in his English class, 24 people were shot and or killed in 1 minute and 44 seconds. And so what happened was we had a school resource deputy that day. He was a coward. And when he went to the front of the building, he heard the gunshots and then he got scared, went and retreated and hid between buildings 7 and 8 for the next 48 minutes and never went in. Even after other officers from the Coral Springs Police Department ran the building, he waited outside. And then we had all the other responding deputies. They all waited outside as well and didn't go in for 11 minutes. So any way that we can get to the victims, and when you have a mass murderer intent on killing your son or daughter in the building, the most important thing is that you stop the killing so that you can stop the dying. And if you have drones in the hallways that can be launched in a matter of seconds to take the shooter out, when it's going to take a school resource deputy several minutes, even if the Parkland deputy had 1 ounce of courage, it's still going to take him a while to get there, him or her, and you can't be everywhere at all times. So any way that we can stop the killing, stop the murderer from hurting innocent children and staff, I'm in favor of.
Yeah, final question. I'm not going to hold you too long this morning. As a parent, do you have a message for other parents about, about how critical of an issue this is? I mean, obviously, people understand, but no one can understand it to the depth as someone like you, who's actually lived it.
I think that every parent, it's their worst nightmare, and we send our kids to school hoping that they're going to come home to us, but every parent understands the risk and is worried and is scared. And the kids are nervous too. They know what's going on in this world we live in. There's a lot of evil in this world and a lot of danger. And so what parents can do is make sure that their administrators, the superintendent, and the school board members know how important school safety is and that they cannot just sweep this under the rug like they did in Parkland. Prior to the Parkland school shooting, the principal of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, where there's 3,000 kids, reported zero bullying for the 3 consecutive years. Zero assaults, zero threats, zero intimidation, which was obviously not true. And so I encourage parents to go to schoolsafetydashboard.org, look up your school, get involved, and support the work of Safe Schools for Alex so that we can continue our work and educate schools about what's happening, about the levels of violence and what we can do to bring that violence down, and also emulate what Florida's done. We have an armed officer in every K through 12 campus throughout the state. We have armed guardians. We have threat assessment teams. Threat assessment is the best tool we have to prevent acts of targeted violence. So we don't just have them in every school. We have a threat assessment team in every district as well. We have district coordinators and a statewide coordinator. And Florida really leads the way across the country on what we're doing here. So it's about not being complacent. It's about prioritizing school safety above all else because you can't teach dead kids.
And my final question, I promise, is this: this idea of these drones is a modern idea, right? It's new technology. Are you hoping it's not the last? Are you hoping that that there's more really thoughtful, engaging solutions to solving this problem, whether it's response, whether it's mental health, whether it's, you know, more officers, I don't know. But just in general, are you hoping that this isn't the last proposed solution?
Well, schools, you're never done with school safety. And that's the way we feel in Florida. We didn't just, create our school safety center and then say, we're done. We have kept our foot on the accelerator. We've been passing school safety bills every year because the threat is changing. We've got a lot of new superintendents. And so we constantly have to be evaluating what policies and procedures we put in place before, and then make sure that they're not just paper tigers and that they're being done with fidelity. And so you need to review what you did before. We're doing active shooter training. We need to do debriefs on that, make sure that everybody understands what to do. And then when we have a threat that comes in, how are we dealing with those threats and making sure that we get these kids off the pathway to violence and onto a pathway of wellness. And that's the key because all of these individuals, they don't just snap overnight. They all exhibit concerning behavior over time. So, how can we identify those individuals that are exhibiting concerning behavior and are checking all those boxes that the Parkland murderer did? This was no surprise that this individual went on to commit this horrible act of violence. They called him Crazy Boy on campus. And, they should have done something beforehand. They should have never let it get to this situation where he's being a gun on campus. And so, the Parkland murderer was violent in school. He was violent out of school. Law enforcement was at his house over 40 times, and he accumulated over 77 disciplinary referrals just in middle school alone. And so we're all in favor of giving kids a second chance, but not 77 of them, and there's got to be consequences. And we've got to get these individuals off their pathway to violence and get them the help that they need. So it's really, really critical that people take this seriously and do everything we can to make sure this never happens again.